Hello and welcome to the Shaman Stories podcast. This podcast is sacred space dedicated to exploring the world of spirit and the profound connections that those who work with it experience every day. Whether you're feeling the call of the shamanic path or simply searching for answers in uncharted territories, you found the right place. Join me as I sit down with inspiring individuals who live in harmony with spirit, sharing their journeys and insights. Welcome to the Shaman Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Chimbert, and with me today's guest is Marc Mangus, a shamanic practitioner dedicated to helping others find balance, healing, and a deeper connection to their inner selves. Thanks for joining me, Marc.
My pleasure, Jeremy, and I'm really happy to be here.
As we talked about a little bit earlier before we started recording, this podcast is about the journey into spirit, from how you were as a child to where you are now with your practices. So tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do now with your practices.
So I was led to what I'm doing now by an attempt to find ways to heal myself. And along the way, I discovered really it's the gift of the lineage that I learned, which we can talk more about. But what that really taught me was that my wounds were my power. My vulnerability is my power. And I could use that to help other people find their own inner healer. And so it developed into quite a strong calling. And so what I'm doing now is I work with people one-on-one, as well as in programs, group programs. And I have a lot of things that I do for the community that are free. And then some of the more intensive things, of course, that's the step up things, if you will. People would pay me like they would pay a health coach or a life coach. But I'm really about transformation and helping people step into the person that they were always meant to be in this life, and less about intervening in a problem, quote unquote, or helping someone on a session by session basis. I don't find that's terribly effective long term. And so that's just a real quick summary of how I work with people.
Okay. So you mentioned your illness, and I think we'll jump to that in a minute, but I want to go back just a little bit further with your childhood.
Mm-hmm.
Did you grow up with any type of these practices? Were your parents spiritual in any way? Were you that weird kid around town reading the Egyptian Book of the Dead or other esoteric books?
I grew up in a Christian household. My family, when I was very young, was Mormon, and I'm the youngest of seven. And there's 8 years separating me and my next oldest sibling. So very quickly, it was almost like being an only child, as everybody left the house. But yeah, I grew up with the indoctrination that a lot of people have had, where Jesus is your savior, and all the Christian, the hierarchy of heaven and the threat of hell and all those things. So it was quite the opposite of any notion of indigenous wisdom or world religion, or it was very kind of insular and closed. This is the way it is. And if you follow this, you will be saved. And if you don't, then you're going to have a problem in the next life.
Yeah, so completely different for sure. Then let's go ahead and jump to your injury, because I'm assuming that's what truly inspired you to begin that spiritual journey, or was there something more before that?
Yeah, it was the injury definitely was the catalyzing event. But before that, I struggled for a long time with my health, with being overweight, with prioritizing myself and my own health over notions of material success or external validation for my success, things like that. And really sacrificing my being for this notion of what does it look like to be successful and be happy as a man in this world. And there was no balance. And looking back now with the perspective that I have today, I see all the milestones along the way where spirit was trying to show me that. And it just got more and more severe. The lessons did, until I finally paid attention because I didn't have a choice. It was literally life or death. And so in 2011, I was just driving home from work, and I stopped at a stoplight, just like I'd done probably 100 times before. And out of nowhere, I was hit from behind by a big Mercedes G-Wagon. And the person, I later found out the person didn't even brake. So they literally hit me going about 50 miles an hour. And fortunately for me, in a lot of ways, but fortunately I was in a big car, big heavy car. But it still crunched the frame and they had to extract me with jaws of life. And I had just passed the hospital. So the hospital was less than a mile from where my accident was. And the ambulance was able to get me there quickly. And long story short, I had a very similar experience in the ER that a lot of people do, that they completely misdiagnosed my injuries, gave me some medication, and sent me home. And that began what became a 12-year journey with debilitating chronic pain, where I could work if I medicated, but I had no quality of life. There was really the personality that was me was so suppressed by the medication and by the pain. I could choose. Do you want to have your brain chemistry altered by opioids? Or do you want to be in so much pain that you can barely think? Those are my two choices for a long time. And so I went through the whole Western medicine rodeo of the standard of care for the kind of injuries I had, which is go to a pain management clinic, get pills. And this is before the whole opioid crisis. Pills, and then come back in a month and we'll reassess. That's it. They basically give you pills and they leave you to your own devices. And so I got very depressed, very overweight. And in 2013, a couple of years later, I got to the point where I was suicidal. And I was asking myself, if the rest of your life is going to look like this, what's the point? And that was my beginning of my dark night of the soul. And I really had to go within for the first time at a deep level and find the wherewithal to continue. And obviously I'm here, so I did that. But that was really what started my journey of trying to find alternatives. What else is there out there in the world that I could use to improve my situation? And I really started releasing a lot of my preconceptions and my expectations at that point so that I could investigate that and really find out what's going to work for me. And I started looking at chiropractic and acupuncture and all manner of things, neuromuscular massage. I started with the probably more accessible things that most people would think of before I eventually got to where I was looking at spirituality and kind of mind, body, spirit, more holistic approaches. And all of those things helped, but I still struggled with, there was a lot of judgment now looking back, there was a lot of suffering involved in all of those things. There was always a compromise, always a trade-off, was still taking medication. I didn't find it. I didn't crack the code. I didn't find the formula. Or what can I find? What can I do? Until much more recently, a couple of years ago. And that's when I started investigating shamanism. So yeah, was the turning point. The last fork in the road on that particular segment of my life was in 2015 when I almost bled out. I had a sudden onset ulcer. With no warning, I literally went from feeling okay to having a stomach ache to losing 6 pints of blood in 45 minutes. And it was from the pain medication I was taking. And I would get regular checkups in healthcare and everything, and nobody caught any problems. So I could have just been minding my own business. And then if my wife wasn't home, I would have been dead on the bathroom floor. That was the last straw, for sure. And that's when I completely changed my diet and started really looking at practices rather than just knowledge. I needed to penetrate my whole being.
Yeah, it's crazy how much just changing one's diet can fix almost a majority of our issues out there. Not everything, but it has a good baseline for a lot of things.
Yeah.
I would say for sure. When you found shamanism, did you try other modalities, or was it just one of those things that shamanism just kept coming up for you? What exactly drew you towards that path?
Yeah, both. I did try other modalities. For a long time, I felt particularly drawn to, but ironically blocked from doing meditation. And I think it was because of the 5 or 6 different medications I was taking, because they give you medication for your pain and then they give you other things to counteract the symptoms and that whole story. And I was taking SSRIs, which, oh my God, I can't believe how much that alters your brain chemistry and how hard it is to stop taking. That was the pain medication was one thing, but getting off of the SSRIs was really challenging. And it took me months to get to where I wasn't feeling dizzy every time I turned my head. But the shamanism, it's interesting. Since I was a teenager, I've read 2 or 3 books a month my whole life. And so I've read a lot about literally hundreds of books about world religion and indigenous beliefs, and started to make connections about core concepts, what Jung would call the collective unconscious and the concepts that live there, and connect cultures that have supposedly never had any contact with each other, and yet they believe the same things and they have the same symbology, and they developed certain things around the same time. All that kind of stuff. I was very fascinated with all that. So a lot of the different schools of indigenous wisdom were familiar to me, but it was just cool stories. It wasn't in my heart. And I certainly didn't practice anything, but it kept coming up and it kept coming up in different ways. Spirit uses synchronicity to get you to pay attention. And I think I was at a low point where I was thinking, okay, what next? I've made some improvements in my health. I've lost some weight, still struggling. What's next? And I got an email from the Four Winds Society for a gathering of the shamans in May of 2023 with Alberto Villoldo and several other shamans were going to come to this place in Sedona. And I didn't really feel like I had the time or the money to do it, but I did it anyway. I felt really called to be there. And that was a catalyzing event that sent me on a completely different path, because I was able to, had nothing else to do. I was in a completely different space, not in my life, right? Surrounded by, interestingly, there was about 80 attendees, and I would say probably 72 of them were women. And so I was in this very nurturing, non-judgmental, caring bubble the whole weekend, and doing all the workshops and that kind of thing, and learning a lot more about the practice, because there were several practitioners there and I was absolutely riveted. I was fascinated, not necessarily by the shamans, they were amazing, but by the other attendees in all the walks of life. There were medical doctors there. There were pharmacists there, nutritionists, people that had been doing sound healing and shamanism for decades. It was like every different modality, every different level of development you could imagine was represented in this group. And I know now that wasn't an accident, right? That was for me. That was a big part of it was for me, to show me the possibilities that I could pursue. And I had a chance to talk to Alberto a little bit and learn about the Four Winds Society and their shamanic energy program, and ended up enrolling and starting the next month. And so I did that for 6 months, very intensive, transformational healing, what I even call it, because it's so much more than training. It's they show you how to do something, and then they expect you to go do it a bunch of times and then report back, kind of like in a case study format. And it was so intense that I had a really hard time doing anything else in my life except that, because I was changing the whole time I was learning how to do all this stuff. And the thing that really fascinated me, and it gives me chills even when I think back about it, is it was as much learning new stuff as it was, I felt like I was remembering. I felt like I was connecting to ancient knowledge that I already had, and that it was just locked up behind all the pain, behind all the personality distortion, whatever you want to call it, that I had in this life. And this was the process of unlocking it. And this is where I also unlocked my purpose and my calling to do this with other people. And that's developing in a completely unexpected and amazing way too. But my healing journey continues. And the thing I want to express and emphasize to this audience is being a healer isn't about being completely healed. We talk about the journey of the wounded healer. And a big part of your personal connection with your clients is that you have had a healing journey and are on a healing journey as well. And so this notion of this idealized, perfectly healed coach or healer that kind of deigns to share their greatness with their clients is just totally wrong. It's like, we're peers. We're both here on earth. This is a school. I've unlocked some things that I can share with you. I could probably act as a guide and maybe shine some light on things that you're not aware of. Let's go on this journey together. It's very much a co-creation, joint healing kind of thing. And I can tell you that of all the amazing, intense experiences I've had working with clients, that I got as much or more out of it than they did. Because they're unlocking things in me when we go through those intense experiences. And it's reminding me what's possible.
Agreed. And there's that saying too, with the clients that come to you for their healing, it's usually something that you need to look at yourself. And I find that all the time. One example was when my father passed away a year ago. I'm working through that grief, but then suddenly I'm getting clients coming to me who are working through their grief. And it's, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. And just, we're both now working through our own grief together. And some of their insights that they had were helpful for me as well. And so it is amazing how spirit just brings you together with the right people at the right time.
Yes, absolutely. Alberto says that all the time during the training, that spirit always, you are the right shaman for the person that is put in front of you 100% of the time, even if it doesn't feel like that.
Agreed. And the Four Winds aren't advertising here, but I went through them as well. And I totally agree with the 6-month intensive. It completely changed everything about my life and my trajectory as well. It was definitely eye-opening. I wish I could have done the shaman event in Sedona. That'd have been fun, for sure. And touching on that, and I noticed the same thing going through my own training, but there always seems to be an imbalance. There's way more females doing this type of work than men. I have my own theories on that, but I'm curious if you have any thoughts as to why that might be.
Yeah, I've done a fair bit of thinking about that, as you can imagine. And it happens in all the groups too, the groups that naturally congregate to talk about practices or shamanism, four winds or not, tend to be 75-80% women. And in looking at the lineage of the Karo shamans that we're part of, and looking at the teaching, everything they do is of the earth and it's of the mother. It's feminine. And especially when I went to Peru for a month and I was essentially living with them and going to the sacred sites with them, what an amazing example of a balanced man. Every Paco that I would be around was arms open, looking you in the eyes, my brother. And I just felt it was just this heart connection every time. And they would make you feel like there's no difference between you and me. This is what I do. You're on your path. And they make it very clear that their mission on earth is to create more Pacos. And so in a way, you are their mission. But getting back to the female thing, I think it's the connection to Pachamama. It's of the earth. And it's this feminine, nurturing, guiding, embodying, surrendering kind of energy. And other cultures, that's much more prevalent and much more in the front than it certainly is in America. But I think in Western culture in general, we tend to be much more male-dominated thinking. It's tried to say the patriarchy. When you look at our peers, men, white men of a certain age, it's all about what you can do, not who you are, what you can achieve, what you can create, what you can change. That's all very male. And there's nothing wrong with male energy. And there's nothing wrong with female energy, but either one out of balance creates the problems that we see culture wide, right? So I think women are naturally, they probably resonate with the teachings a little easier than men because it is so much not just the divine female energy, but it's that connection to the earth, the nurturing energy. And you think about the practices we do, it's all about nurturing, creating a sacred or holding space, right? Passing energy. It's not you doing anything. And I think that's something that we all go through when we're learning the practices. At least for me, and the feedback I heard from my classmates was you start to think, okay, what do I need to do here? This person has a problem. I need to figure it out. And you quickly learn that you can't do the work that way. You have to get out of the way and do what we call being a hollow bone and allowing the energy of source to connect with that person and pass back and forth. It's their work. You're just there as a facilitator and a guide and a space holder. And yeah, stuff in ceremonies, and you can do processes. But at the end of the day, it's them doing it. And that's a very non-Western way of operating. And it's something that did not feel natural to me at first.
Oh, that's true. And that's true for every modality. Like I do Reiki too, and it's the same thing. You can't be attached to the outcome. You just gotta let it
Mhm.
source flow through you, let the energy goes where it needs, and hope that the person gets what they need out of it and just not be attached at all. It's definitely it's a hard thing to learn, that's for sure. And I still
Yeah.
have those problems when you're working on family members or friends, people you don't care about, and you really want this
Mhm.
to work for them, but you're trying to stay impartial. But it can be very hard versus a client off the street. It's, yeah, whatever. This is what we're doing. Cool. Did it work? Great. Something goes wrong, let me know type of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought that up. I totally agree with what you're saying. And one of the biggest things I had to learn in some of the most transformatively powerful sessions I've done with people were with family because I had to figure that out. I had to figure out, okay, you're working on your 95-year-old mom and she's in pain. You love her and you want her to feel better. But that's the mark. That's you. The shaman says, I need to hold space for this person to connect to the all that is and do their work and not have any connection to the outcome. And what helped me was having that conversation with my family member and allowing them to help me separate the roles and separate the energy. And my mom in particular, she blows my mind every day, man. She's 95 years old. She's been Mormon most of her life. And it took me about 6 months of just having conversations with her about what I do. And because she saw the changes it was making in me and she saw how excited I was about doing this. And I think at first she was a little fearful. What's he getting into? This is strange. And he's not talking about Jesus. So there must be a problem. So yeah, after I talked to her for several months, then slowly I started doing some sessions with her and she got it. And she's now, when we have conversations every other day or so, she's having visions and she's having ancestors visit her and she's taking total responsibility and accountability for her life and her emotions. And she's doing shadow work that she's never done in her whole life. And just the language that comes out of her now, it's all self-referencing and it's all about, here's what I think this means, or can I bounce this idea off you because I'm trying to get to the meaning of this and why this is happening for me, right? When before it was just all throwing up the hands and saying, Jesus, take the wheel of my life and I'll be a good Christian and everything will work out. With no focus on the now. And what am I supposed to learn right now? And why am I having this problem? I love the anecdote that Alberto says about the man in the jungle walking alongside the shaman and he gets bit by a snake. And the question is, what does the shaman do? The shaman takes the man to a doctor so he can get the poison extracted and doesn't die. And then as the shaman's leaving the doctor's office, he says, "Oh, by the way, if you want to understand why the snake bit you, come see me." That really encapsulates what we do, right?
No, that's amazing with your mother. So, as you go along this journey, though, how has it affected your other relationships? Have there been any conflicts with any other family or friends as you do this work?
Surprisingly little. It's interesting that you asked me that because I have a very loving and supportive family in general, but they've gone from like cautious optimism to how can I do this for myself? I want to be on this path. I want you to teach me how to do this, right? But at work, I'm a technology executive. I have been for many years, and I'm a healthcare strategist at Red Hat. Very left-brained, patriarchal kind of job, typical tech job, right? And for a long time, I was keeping that world completely separate from my other world, whatever that other world is. And at some point, several months ago, I realized, you know what? There's only one me. And if I'm going to live authentically, I have to do that to some degree out loud and just let the chips fall where they may. Because the way I was looking at it was some subconscious fear of not being validated. And when I started to let that go, and now the way I think about life and being an Aini, harmony, reciprocity, is I want to give spirit the maximum amount of latitude to operate in my life and give me what I need, not necessarily what I want. Because I'm here to do my work. That's it. Everything else is set dressing. I'm here to do my work, and I'm here to help other people unlock their own ability to do their work, right? So I changed my LinkedIn profile to be both. And I just started mentioning it to people because they were seeing the changes in me. I lost 120 pounds in the last 2 years. And people that I hadn't seen at work in a while, like I'd go to a conference and I'd see them and they'd go, "Mark, is that you? What are you doing? You look great," that kind of thing. And I do I follow the 10% rule because you never know where people's backgrounds are, what they're able to hear, what they're able to take in, right? So I just give them a little bit. Or I say something funny I could tell you, but you probably wouldn't believe me, right? And then give them a little bit. And if they walk away, say, "That's great. Let's have drinks later." Great. Okay. Or they'll say, "Tell me more. I'm interested. Tell me more." And so what I found in living that way for probably about the last 6 months is nothing that I thought was going to happen or feared would happen has happened. Nothing. I get either silence or I get interest to different degrees, and even have brought some of those people into the men's group that I had only known professionally before that. No idea they were interested in this kind of stuff, right? Because it never came up. So I think we're in a time now where it's time for all of us to live as authentically as we can. Because I don't think anything can change any other way. And I think change radiates outward from within. It's the only way it happens.
And with that, with your work, how do you foresee your role adapting in the future? For example, there's a good book, I forget the author's name right now, but it's called The Corporate Shaman. And it's
Mm-hmm.
basically a story about a shaman who works with corporate executives. He helps them find a power animal for a project that they're working on, and the whole team rallies behind the project. He works with the executive who's having a lot of issues, does a soul retrieval on them. It's a really short story, but he fixes all their problems, quote unquote, and then he walks away and he goes to the next job. I'm not saying you would do that per se, but do you think there's room perhaps for journey work or bringing in a power animal at the job site for a major project of some sort or something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, a good friend that I made going through the training, she has her own corporate consulting and risk management business that she built over the last 30 years. And so she's used to doing like management consulting, corporate retreats with executives, stuff like that. And we've talked a lot about this, is bringing shamanic work into that space. And she's doing it a bit. And she's how her practice as a shaman is taking shape is that she's doing retreats. She doesn't do like programs or one-on-one work that much with people, but she does these retreats, intensives. And that's where she brings all of it in. And the people that she does intensives with are these high-powered corporate types. But they come out of the office environment and go someplace amazing and sacred to go do the work. But yeah, I think I'm leaving that open. And I have another colleague that does just, they're not in the shamanic world, but they do just corporate wellness programs. And she's been asking me about the same thing you just asked me about. So it keeps coming up, and I think it's very needed. And I think people are a lot more open to it than probably we think they are, especially if you present it in the right context. Because I think what a lot of people are afraid of or used to is this proselytizing approach, where it's, I'm a guru, I'm giving you my pearls of wisdom and my 12-step process, and you go do that and your life will be wonderful. And maybe there are some of those things that work, I don't know, but I think more typically it's, everybody's trying to find a pill or a process to fix something, fix whatever's wrong with them, without actually ever going inward and digging through the muck and the shadows to figure out, how do I get rid of this? How do I release this? They try to skip over that. And to be fair, everything in our society tells them that's how you do it. Go find a pill, go find a process, go find a new exercise routine, a new job, a new spouse, whatever, right? Something that you find out here is going to fix you.
And as you continue down, what are the practices that you use that have been especially valuable for you? You mentioned trying meditation earlier, but are you better at meditating now? Do you journal, mindfulness?
Yeah, I was really blocked about meditation for a long time. And looking back, I think it was because there was some fear about who I would be if I had to give up things that I was holding as part of my identity, like being in pain. Like, who would I be if I'd been in pain for so long and it affected every aspect of my life? Where I'd wake up in the morning and it was like I was looking at life through a keyhole, just this really narrow, focused, what can I get done today before I'm in so much pain I have to stop? In total survival mode. And I think trying to go inward at all in any way, like with meditation, it was triggering this unconscious fear of who would I be if that wasn't my daily experience? And it wasn't until I was ready to release that or start releasing it that I was able to start to get access to the parts of me that were really the parts that were going to heal me. And I had this epiphany or crack you open kind of moments at that gathering of the shamans. I went to a workshop on the last day that was about ancestor work with Stephen Farmer. And I don't know if you know who he is, but he's been in the shaman game for a long time, 40 years or so. And he does a lot of art, and he has his own oracle deck, and he's written a couple of books about the Archangel Michael. I learned all this afterward. I didn't know who it was. I just saw this smiling, wizened old man, like in his 80s, that was walking around barefoot, and everybody seemed to really like him. And he had just this energy about him. And I was drawn to do the ancestor work. I made a pact with myself at the beginning of the weekend. I'm not going to pre-choose any session. I'm just going to go where I feel like that's where I should be. And I wandered into his workshop. Come to find out, he has this whole process he's been doing to connect you with the ancestor that has the same work that you do, the same inner work that you do. And so he leads us on this guided meditation, and we go inward and we in this meditative space, and we start visualizing our ancestors, starting with their mom and dad, grandparents, going back in rows in front of us out into infinity. And we visualize at one point who is there to help us right now. And my paternal grandfather popped up right in front of me with this smiling face. And I had a great relationship with him. He died around 1990. I was pretty young still, young man. I never really got to know him as a person, but as a grandpa and visits on every couple of months, that kind of thing. And he made it very clear that this whole thing that I was struggling with my pain, he had the same problem. And I didn't know what that problem was, but I was just leaving myself open to get his help. And then Stephen Farmer is famous for his work with the Archangel Michael energy. And he had us visualize Michael in the space with us. And I tell you, I could feel the heat behind me because he said he's standing behind you and he's extending his wings. And in my mind's eye, I could almost see the flames from his wings in my peripheral vision. And my grandfather standing right in front of me, smiling at me with his hands on my heart. And I went into this samadhi state where my whole body started vibrating, almost like I was having a seizure. And I felt like there was an electrical cord plugged into the top of my head. And it was powerful. It was one of the most powerful things I've ever felt. And as it eventually ended, and I started to come back into my body and back into my awareness, I just naturally wandered outside and had my bare feet on the bare earth. And that was when I realized that for the first time in 12 years that I had no pain. It was like somebody shut off a light switch. It was gone. It wasn't gradual at all.
Wow.
And to this day, I am pain-free. And that was the last day I took any medication. That's my personal experience. I know everybody's varies. But based on that, I can tell you that anything is possible if you believe.
That's amazing. Yeah, you hear stories about that, but I've never actually, it's always from a person of a person. I've never actually talked to someone who's been through it. That's incredible. So the work that Stephen Farmer did, is that something you're trying to learn as well, or have you gone back to that work?
I so much of what we do as shamanic practitioners and energy healers is non-logical, and tapping into that imaginal realm where anything's possible and that belief determines our reality. I try to be open to connect with any modality that I think is resonates with me in a way that's going to help me and it's going to help my clients. That particular thing that I experienced with Stephen Farmer, it struck me as very personal to him, like working with the angel energy and stuff. I don't feel a connection to that. And that's fine. Everybody's got their own medicine, right? And his is powerful. And I've since read his book. I think it's just called Michael, and how his whole journey with that energy. And I actually bought a copy of it for my brother, whose name is Michael. And he's gotten a lot out of it as well. So yeah, I'm not terribly connected to that, but I'm still learning what I'm connected, what I resonate with and what I'm connecting to. Going through the training with the four winds, even that, you find that some things you're really like, I really like doing illuminations, or I really like doing soul retrievals or whatever. For me, sounds weird to say, but I felt a real affinity with the death rites.
Mm.
Like not just death, but birth. And we didn't really learn any ceremonies around welcoming souls into the world. But I feel really connected to bringing them in and shipping them out. I feel like I can hold space for that and be calm and peaceful when people are at their most broken. And so I've started to explore that, and I've done that a few times with people. And it's weird. It's almost hard to describe in words, but it's one of those things where when you do it, you feel like, yeah, I'm supposed to do this. Like yeah, okay, I get that energy. Soul retrievals too. I've had ceremonies done on me for soul retrieval, but also done ceremonies for that. And that's one of the most transformative things that we do, because we're reconnecting people with parts of themselves that could have been missing or separate from them for lifetimes. So to say that they're doing their work and they're becoming the person that they were always supposed to be, that's one of the things that really gets you there. Because you're healing those parts of yourself that you may not even have been aware of were wounded because you didn't know they existed. And yet you're still repeating the patterns that they set forth eons ago, let alone all the trauma people experience in their current life.
Oh yeah, I agree with that one. For me, when I went through the training, extractions was my thing, and it's still my thing. It's been something that 90% of my clients that come to me, I'm extracting. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just something, when we got to that module, I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let me learn more about this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been my thing. But so what you said, we can learn all this stuff, but really, what does our passion lie, and what's the one thing that we're truly, I don't even want to say good at, but it's the thing that really drives us.
Mm-hmm.
Just like for you, the death work is yours, extractions is definitely mine.
Yeah, I can see that.
Is there any other education you're looking to take? Is there any other training you're looking to put into place to help benefit your practice or your life in general?
Yeah, I'm doing a couple of things. I'm in the master's circle with the Four Winds, which is a 2-year program, and you have to complete 5 classes, I think, during that 2 years. And so I think I'm in my second or third class. It's all a blur. So there's that. And then I have this other woman who's a mentor. Her name's Jordana Iyer, and she's got this program called the Spiral Leadership Academy. And it's really interesting. It's not part of any particular energy or shamanic practice, but what she does is show you how to integrate this non-logical world with the logical. And it's really geared toward corporate leaders. Go back to your previous question. And I went through her program. It's a 9-month program before I did the Four Winds back in 2021. And then she called and invited me to be in her advanced program, which she's just starting. And she's doing her first cohort, and I'm in it. And it's less about concepts and more about practice. And we've only met once so far. So that's going to be really interesting. It's less like her teaching us and more like a co-leader situation where we're all bringing something into it. And it'll be interesting to see how that takes shape. But yeah, I'm trying to do the same thing with the training because we're all exposed to so many different things that we could go spend our time and money on. And I'm trying to just be very open and really follow my heart rather than my brain about what should I learn next versus when should I not be learning and I should be spending time integrating and practicing. And that's probably the key thing that I would want to leave your listeners with is learning can actually be a trap. And I'm saying this without judgment because I've been in it. That learning and not integrating what you've learned can be a trap. And I have peers and colleagues and friends that I see that go from one thing that they're learning to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And I don't say anything or judge at all, but in my heart, I have a question. It's like, where are you making space for you? Where are you integrating what you learned so that you can heal yourself, heal the people around you? There has to be time for that. And I feel like I hit a wall after I did the Four Winds training because I was so charged up about, man, this is awesome. I want to work with everybody. I want to help everybody. I want to look at all my shadows and practically dancing around just with so much energy. And then I hit a wall and I realized as I was doing my daily rituals every day, I was getting this message, slow down, quiet, stop moving, integrate, embody the energy. And I got to the point where I didn't really practice with people at all for 6, 8 weeks after it. And I was not expecting that. I was expecting to go from high to a high. And I think for a lot of people, it doesn't work that way. Especially for us, for me, speaking for myself, what I've learned is that it's less about what I practice as like a daily ritual, for example, and more about the energy that I'm embodying that I hope to help other people unlock in themselves. There's no skipping over the fact that if you want to do that, then that energy has to be in you, right? You can't just decide, okay, today I'm going to be spiritual. But for the last week, I was not being spiritual. Yeah, it's not really, I go back to the concept of Aini. And what really started to change things in my life and allowed me to heal, I'll take my weight loss, for example, because that's something that's very easy to see for the people that have known me for a long time. I didn't really lose weight and keep it off until I realized that I didn't have a weight problem. I had an Aini problem. I had a harmony problem. And so I completely shifted my thinking over time to where am I out of balance in my life, holistically, mind, body, spirit. And I started putting my effort in healing in whatever came up next. Because it's like peeling the layers of an onion, right? Keep getting layer. Just when you think you got somewhere, there are a whole bunch more layers to work on. And so that's the approach I started taking. And then within 9 months, I had lost 70 pounds, something like that. I'm going through the program, learning Grow a New Body, starting to incorporate the principles, doing intermittent fasting. All of that stuff would have seemed like really onerous before, like something I have to do, and it's going to involve suffering, and it's going to be in deprivation, and I have to make lists and put them on the cupboard to remind myself all the stuff that I had done before, and probably a lot of people listening to. I didn't do any of that. I started making very small incremental changes every day. And I would only take on the next change when I felt like the last change was sustainable. Then I would do the next thing and the next thing. And pretty soon, weeks, months later, I realized that my entire lifestyle with food had changed. And it's also what led me very gradually to go from being an omnivore to a vegetarian, or first to a pescatarian, then a vegetarian. And now I'm completely plant-based. But I tell people I'm not like a militant vegan or anything. I got there because I was asking, what should I do next to spirit and my body? And listening to the answer. And for a long time, when I wanted to eat some fish, it would say, yes, eat that. And eventually came the day, no, you don't need that anymore. Just eat plants. Okay, we'll see how it goes. But I tell people I reserve the right. Tomorrow, I could ask that question, and the answer might be yes, eat that. And I will eat it. So it's about balance. It's not about the food. It's not about arbitrarily choosing a lifestyle that appeals to you for aesthetic reasons. It's about really being open and really being in dialogue with the wholeness of who you are and letting that guide you.
I definitely agree with all that. And I would just add on to the person who's taking multiple classes over and over again, there's nothing wrong with that. Knowledge is great. We want to learn. But one thing I had a teacher say once was, if you're reading 3 books on the topic or taking 3 classes on the topic, at some point you need to take action. You need to
Mhm.
move forward. You need to actually practice what you're reading,
Mhm.
implement what you're reading. And if you're not doing that, then sucking up knowledge left and right serves no purpose for you.
Yeah, that's right. For you, right? For you're doing it. And if you're just I did this for years because like I told you up front, I was reading like 3 books a month since I was a teenager. And I would say 99% of that was just information in my brain. It was not affecting anything else. So I was very well read and I was fun at parties because I could answer lots of trivia questions, right? But that's about all the only function it served. But now what I'm finding that's really exciting is when I'm doing the practices and I'm doing the inner work, I'll have whole blocks of knowledge that I filed away and didn't even remember pop up in my awareness. Oh yeah, I learned a lot about that culture, didn't I? And this is how they relate to what the Indians did and how the Incas operated. And now I see how those things connect. So that's really cool. And that's all stuff that just had no impact on my life until now. But I know that it all happened for a reason.
We've touched upon a little bit, but what is the most beautiful or surprising thing about your journey that you would like others to understand? Or maybe something that even surprised yourself as you went through this?
I think what surprised me the most is how much my own inner work has affected everyone around me. And I'll give you an example of my brother, who I love dearly. He's got a lot of health issues. He takes medication. He's got problems with his legs. He's got problems with his digestion. And like a lot of people, he's slow to change. He's trying to find the right word. I won't say distrustful, but he has to get the same information several times before he can take it in, right? And so I knew if I went right at him, not that I'd want to, but I knew if I went right at him and said, hey, you should change your diet and do this and blah, 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 that it would just go in one ear and out the other. And so many people are like that, right? Because they don't want to change. So I didn't focus on that at all. I didn't tell him anything unless he asked me. But he saw me go through this journey and he saw how much my health was improved. And he was there the whole time for all the reports, right? Of all the things that were happening to me. It wasn't just the weight loss. It was before this, I was pre-diabetic. I'm not now. Before this, my A1C was out of whack. My cholesterol was, all the things were out of whack. And I started getting in this cadence with my doctor where I was getting a battery of tests every 3 months because I wanted the record. I wanted the milestones, right? And he saw that within 6 months, all of my vitamin levels, everything was like dead, set, center, normal, right? Nothing was out of balance anymore. And it was all because of the way I was eating. And so slowly, he started adopting some of the same things. And I just encouraged him. What do you want to know? And we had very brief conversations. It wasn't like I was giving him this treatise on what to do. And he's 5'8", I'm 6'4", and weight loss is relative. He's lost like 70 pounds now
Yes.
on that small frame. And it's changing his life. And now he's starting to realize all the other things that he can change. And that's just one example. I'm seeing it in everyone around me. And we have this tendency, especially as men, we want to take care of people and fix things. And I disconnected from that completely and just said, make it about your journey. And if they want to know and they ask, then give them information. Now, it's different if you're a coach and somebody's coming to you as a client and wants to know. But just what it really taught me in that small personal way with my own family is what if we all did that? What if we all focused on healing our own wounds and let the energy of that radiate outward from us? How much different would the world be if so many millions and billions of us stopped focusing on external validation and being right, quote unquote, and worrying about what the other guy believes being different than what I believe? Just drop all of that and look inward and say, I don't care what you believe, if you're a Christian, if you're a Muslim, if you're Jewish, whatever, or nothing, atheist, but looking inward and saying, what in myself is unhealed? And what can I do about it? And just let that be the mission. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday about this, and she got a good laugh when I said, yeah, it's like with all this political firestorm around the election and stuff in America, I personally felt completely disconnected from it. Like I was watching a movie. I had no emotional connection to it. And I felt like everybody was rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic and saying, look, I have the prettiest deck chair while the boat is sinking, right? And that's the feeling I get about our systems, that the systems themselves have no value. It's the people in them that have value. And the systems are created by us. So why don't we make them a reflection of who we are? And unfortunately, they are right now, right? Because a lot of people are in chaos and in pain, and there's so much going on that's oppressive to you being fully expressed as the person you are. But how do we change that? Do we change that by changing the systems? No. I would argue no, we can't. Because then we're always chasing something, we're chasing a moving target. All we can do is work on ourselves. Literally, that's all we can do. And help others that come to us for help.
Definitely agree with that one too. It's been an interesting week, that's for sure.
Yeah. A lot of people are in pain right now, and I feel it, believe me. The night of the election, I could barely sleep. I slept 30 minutes at a time. And normally I'm pretty good at just letting energy pass through me. We learn the practice of invisibility, and I take that to heart. Just let it go. And if it triggers something in you, then that shows you where your work is. And that's the extent of it for me. There's no polarity in it at all. But it's so intense. So many people in pain, and so much of it is self-inflicted. And I'm not saying that there aren't trends in the world that are oppressive. What's going on with people that don't identify with the binary genders, people that are of color. There's a lot of things going on right now that are oppressive. I absolutely think that. But you also have to, at the same time, examine your own perception of those things. And what's your part in it to cause yourself pain, right? And what can you do about it at the end of the day? What can you do about it? Can you heal yourself? Can you heal others that come to you and are in pain? Can you help them, show them, guide them? Can you make a safe space for a small community? These are the kinds of things that people are not thinking of generally. They're thinking of, how can I rail against whatever it is? Pick the topic, right? And by doing that, you're giving your energy to it by fighting it. The fight is the energy. You're giving the energy to the thing you're fighting, right? So how do we not do that? First, stop fighting, right? And start focusing on healing. I'm sure that would be poignant to you because you served, right? Yeah. And we look back the last 6,000 years of history, and we've had war after war after war. So how are we still today making the connection that we can fight for peace? Because it's never happened. Periods of it, but then we have more war, right? And the people that experience peace are always an insular group, right? It's never everybody.
Yeah, that goes back to earlier when we were talking about the masculine and the feminine.
Yeah.
We've had the divine masculine basically get corrupted over thousands of years, which has led us into this path. And that's always been my own hiccup on it, is everybody's promoting the divine feminine, which is great. Don't get me wrong. We need that. But they're forgetting about the masculine because we want to consider it toxic and push it away. But we still need it. We still need to bring it back, and we need to bring it back into the balance, the Aini, bring both parts together, not just for the person, but holistically for everyone. And until we do that, we're always going to be at this imbalance and we're always going to have these problems. And it's like you said,
100.
it starts though with each person individually finding that balance within themselves first, showing others how to find that balance, and it just ripples effect. It's that butterfly
Right.
across the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's one of those things where everybody on the planet doesn't have to change. I think it's a critical mass of people can change, and it will really start to ripple out from there, right? I think people get trapped in this thinking that they have to focus on the system changing because that makes everybody comply if they're inside that system. But I feel like that's just a big illusion.
Yep.
It's just, it doesn't work that way and it never has.
The system's made of people. So until the people change,
Yeah,
the system doesn't change. You can't
right.
stop from the top down.
Yeah. So stop focusing. I love the people that are focused on grassroots things. That's amazing. Community gardens, community action committees, the stuff that happens in your town, in your city, in your neighborhood, absolutely are worthwhile, but not at the expense of doing your own inner work. I think they can be done in harmony together, right? You can say, for example, if I feel like I'm an initiated earth keeper, what does that mean to me? What can I do for the earth every day? That's in I need with the inner work that I'm doing for myself. And that can be a beautiful expression and a beautiful experience of how that reciprocity can work. One of the things I'm starting to explore with my ex, who's still a dear friend and business partner, is she's a psychologist, and we're exploring this way of moving meditation in nature. And I look at it from a shamanic perspective as something that I can do as an earth keeper, is help other people realize how accessible it is to connect to Pachamama in a very personal and intimate way. And you can do it every day. And you can do it almost anywhere. And she's coming at it more from an Eastern mindfulness and meditation perspective. And then we overlap together in the expression of doing this with people. And just stuff like that. When's the last time that average person just sits down and thinks about what can I do to increase the harmony in my own life and express that harmony in the immediate vicinity of where I am? Most people don't think that way. And we need more people that do.
Agreed. So before we start wrapping it up, just one more question for you. If you could offer advice, and I know you've been doing that throughout our talk, but do you have any other advice you would offer to someone starting their own journey?
Yeah, two things come to mind. One, be kind to yourself. Many of us find it a lot easier to be kind to other people and to forgive other people than to direct that kindness and forgiveness at ourselves. Part of this journey is in healing is to start to feel the things that you've never allowed yourself to feel. And you have to feel that in order to heal it. Feel it to heal it. I didn't come up with that, somebody else did, but it's true. You have to feel it to heal it. And the other thing is, don't take broad swings at things that you think you need to change. You're not going to hit the ball out of the ballpark and everything's going to be fine in that one stroke. The way that this happened for me, and the way that nearly everyone I talk to that's done any degree of healing, it happens in small increments. And you'll reach plateaus too, where you can get change fatigue. Because you're healing and you're changing and things are happening and you feel it, and then you're going, man, I just want a break, I want some peace. So find that in yourself. Find peace. Go into nature, go to a retreat, go out of your own little bubble and find that peace, and then come back and resume, because this is all happening for you. So find ways to balance that peace with the difficult inner work you need to do. It can be very draining. And it can also be hard on families and hard on relationships and all those kinds of things. So take time for yourself to do that balance, that balancing act, and also always be kind to yourself, because you're going to have your days where it's going to be like, you're going to be really mad, really sad, especially for, I can speak from a man's perspective, it's generally not as okay for men to feel anything intensely. And so when we start to peel these layers of the onion back, all that stuff comes out. All that stuff that we haven't allowed ourselves to feel. It's got to go somewhere. So just be kind to yourself. Make sure you're in a place where you're supported and you can express that feeling. That's actually why I started the men's group that I did, that you've been a part of at least one session. And because I think there needs to be as many places as possible for men to come and bring whatever they need to bring into that circle and be supported without judgment by other men.
Nice. Yeah, and I would definitely recommend people looking into your men's group and some of your other work. And with that, I do want to thank you for joining me today. And it was a good conversation. I really do appreciate it. Why don't you let people know where they can find you? Maybe if they want to get some of your services or just have questions for you, maybe join the men's group. Where can they find Marc?
Yeah, we'll post some links in the description for this podcast, but you can find me on my website. It's vitalharmony.com, vital-harmony. And you can click a link there to book time with me to see if working with me as a coach would be beneficial for you. And the first meeting, there's no obligation. It's just us getting to know each other, me getting to know what you're struggling with, what your challenge is, and we can decide if we can help each other. And then I also have a long form program that's a 13-week program where I teach you a lot of the shamanic principles and the way of eating and the things that I learned that really helped me. And then I also do periodic workshops. So you can find out all about that, all of that stuff. There'll be a link also in the description for the podcast for my private Facebook group. And that's where I advertise all the stuff that I'm doing all the time. So you'll see it in there.
Cool. All right. Again, thank you for being with me today, man.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Shaman Stories podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions for guests, or perhaps you have a story, please reach out to me at shamanstoriespodcast@gmail.com. And if you're interested in any of my services, you can find me at Pacific Northwest shamanichealing.com. It's PNW shamanichealing.com. Thank you.